Just a little briefer background. I did teach in the Cache District for 10 years. I taught first grade, and I just last year left to become an instructional coach for the district, which means that I go into first and second year teachers' classrooms and I provide support to them in areas of instruction and classroom management. And I love it. I'm passionate about it. I do miss the classroom. I miss the kiddos a lot, but I believe really strongly in what we're doing as educators. So I'm happy to be here with you. I do have just, a little bit of personal background. I have a daughter who's 11. Her name is Isabel. She's going into 6th grade this year. And she actually asked me just a couple days ago, she said, "Mom, do you think Gary could actually be my teacher at school?" And I was like, no, I don't think he could, but he's a great guy, great administrator. You'll love working with him. Let's look at setting expectations. And let me say, as we go through this, I will try to model some good engagement strategies that you could be using in your classroom with your kiddos, whether you teach kindergarten or 6th grade. I will try to model those strategies that you should be using. So I'm not trying to be condescending and say, as adults, I need you to do this so you can stay with me. I understand that that's not the case, but this is to serve as a model for you, how you can use engagement strategies. Okay, so our session today is called Setting Expectations. Will you say it with me? Setting expectations. Thank you. Up at the top, Randy, can we zoom in just a little closer? Do you know how to do that? This is a quote from Randy Sprick. Raise your hand if Randy Sprick's name is familiar to you. He's, oh good, okay. Randy Sprick is brilliant. He's the developer of the CHAMPS curriculum. We'll talk more about him in a minute, but he has said this: teaching behavioral expectations is, will you fill this in, as important as teaching academic subjects. Teaching behavioral expectations is as important as teaching academic subjects. Why would that be the case? Why when we talk about behavior and academics, are they equal? In fact, will you do that with me? We're going to start behavior, academics, equal. We're going to do that. Can you do it with me, starting behavior? Behavior, academics, equal. Would you just jot down, maybe take a minute and jot down, why do you think that would be true? Okay, even if you're not done, that's okay. You can keep jotting, but can I have a couple of people who'd be willing just to raise their hand and share out with us? Why did you say teaching behavioral expectations is as important as teaching academic content? Yeah, Monty.
Because knowledge of academic subjects is only important, it's only useful when it's applied through behavior.
Okay, so application of content comes through behavior. Okay, so you have to be able to behave appropriately to use the content. Perfect. Teresa? Kara. I was not even close, sorry. Okay, you cannot teach if you cannot manage the student's behavior. Anyone agree with that? Instruction doesn't happen if behavior is not in place. Ooh, I liked that. Can we do that together? We're going to say instruction doesn't happen if behavior is not in place. Starting instruction. Instruction doesn't happen if behavior is not in place. One more. Anyone else? Yeah, I can't see your name, Tent. Sorry. Janena? Okay, go ahead.
Because when we teach them behavior, it's not only for school, it's for their life, it's everywhere they go.
Okay, so we teach them appropriate behavior to give them a life skill. It's not just this is how you act appropriately in my classroom. This is a good way to act in society. This is how you get along with other people. Love it. Okay, I'm going to tell you, thank you for your ideas. I'm going to tell you from research what research says about why this is true, why we should be teaching behavioral expectations as carefully as we teach academic content. Here's the first one. Appropriate behavior is not innate. Appropriate behavior is not innate. In other words, students are not born knowing exactly how they should act in society or in your classroom. Remember my 11-year-old? Oh my heavens, that child used to have the most horrid manners. It was embarrassing to take her anywhere to eat because she would chew with her mouth open And if she got something on her face, she would go like this with her shirt and she would wipe it off, or she would use her hand. And she would sit like this when she was done, and I was like, Isabel, we're in a society. You have to be respectful and careful of how you act. That's not something she was born knowing, though. She had to be taught how to use good manners, and now she's to the point where she'll pick up her knife and fork and she'll say, Mom, do you notice the good manners I'm using? Mm-hmm, good job, dear. Appropriate behavior is not innate. Will you say it with me? Appropriate behavior is not innate. Thank you. Number 2, research says teaching behavior is important because management is the number one factor that affects student learning. Management is the number one factor that affects student learning. That was a study done by Harry Wong. They studied 28 factors that impact student achievement, and at the very top of the list, way ahead of the rest of the factors, was classroom management, which heralds back to the idea we said a minute ago that if management is not in place, instruction can't happen. Number 3, this is my favorite. Last reason it's important to teach behavioral expectations. Management is the most challenging area of the job for teachers. Management is the most challenging area of the job for teachers. In fact, quick statistic for you, over 40% of teachers who leave the field of education after their first year teaching leave because of classroom management problems, which is something I understand. When I taught my very first year, it was a nightmare. It was a horrible year, and I don't want to scare anybody because a lot of you are heading into that abyss. No, I'm just kidding. But my first year teaching, I had 27 students. One of those students was a little girl who had been formally diagnosed with a oppositional defiant disorder. Have you heard of this? It means they don't naturally do what you tell them to do. I had 3 kids that had attention deficit disorder. I had one little boy who had severe autism and would go into these rages of aggression. I had 5 really, really advanced kids who were bored out of their skulls by my content. And I had a really chatty group. Will you make a little face like you can empathize, like, oh, that's awful. It was hard. It was really awful that first year. I want to prevent that for you. I don't want you to be me in 10 years going, oh, my first year was awful. I can't believe I survived. So what I want to do is go through and talk about how do you set these behavioral expectations then, okay? Let's zoom out just a little bit, or move it. Yeah, that's fine. I want to talk a little bit about what researchers say about setting up a classroom. Cade Charlton is actually a professor here at USU, head researcher in the Schools of the Future study, which was a 10-year study where they compared high-achieving schools across the nation. And here's what he found in that study. Ready? They found that the number one common factor in high-achieving schools is that they all have clear expectations in place. Consistently across the nation, high-achieving schools had clear expectations in place. In other words, the students and the parents knew exactly what was expected of them behaviorally. Okay, next. This is Randy Sprick. He's the one that I told you developed the CHAMPS curriculum. Also the director of the Safe and Civil Schools Company. He's probably written more textbooks and conducted more research in the field of education than any of the other researchers combined. Here's what he said. The first thing to determine is whether student misbehavior stems from a lack of clear expectations. When we have problems with disruption, that's the first thing we need to check for is, do the students understand what is expected of them behaviorally? Thomas Higbee, he was my professor and supervisor up at Utah State when I went through my master's program, and the director of the Assert Preschool, if you're familiar with that. I went into his office once and I said, Tom, I'm struggling with something. Will you help me with something? I said, I only have one session to talk to these teachers. This was before I took this job. I said, I only have one session to talk to these teachers, and I'm not sure what to talk about. Like, when there's so much in the field of education, what's the one thing you focus on? And he thought for maybe 2 seconds, and then he hit the table. Expectations. If you can get them to do one thing, if you can get them to be really skilled at one practice, it should be setting a clear expectation. Yes. Okay, so I hope you're noticing some commonalities here. Do you notice that all of these researchers have PhDs? They've all conducted research in the field of education. They all have classroom experience, and they've all said the number one most important single factor to consider is that the teacher knows how to set clear expectations. In fact, since we had 3 of them up there, can we do it 3 times, and each time we'll get just a little bit louder? Like clear, a little louder each time, okay? A teacher has to know how to set clear expectations, clear expectations, clear expectations. Yes, it has to start there. You have to tell the kids what you expect. Thank you. Okay, so on the next page, let's talk about how you do that. If you don't mind, I'll give you another minute, maybe 2. I want you just to think about student teaching experience you've had in another classroom or another school. How do you think you set a clear expectation? What would that look like? Would you take just a minute and jot some notes, some ideas? Okay, it's okay if you're not quite done. But what I'd like to do is go through and tell you, according to research, how you should set a clear expectation. It's actually a really specific process that you should use if you want to be absolutely clear in setting your expectations. What I want you to do is just self-evaluate as we go through this and say, how did I do? How much did I know about setting a clear expectation? Okay? Here's the very first thing you need to do. Will you write by number 1, when setting a clear expectation, will you write, tell expectation? Or tell the expectation. Turns out you have to use oral language to specifically say to the students what it is you want the behavior to look like. Is that shocking to anyone? It shouldn't be. I thought this was kind of interesting. In the spring, I had the opportunity to sit on an interview panel where we were going to hire another instructional coach, somebody else to do what I do and go into teachers' classrooms. And we interviewed about 15 candidates. Most of them had over 10 years of experience. Most of them had master's degrees in one field of education or another. And as we sat in those interviews, one of the questions we asked them was, how do you establish good classroom management? What does that look like for you? Every single one of them said, I think it starts by telling students the expectations. You have to start with expectations and establish a common groundwork. So, I'll ask you answer. The first thing we have to do to set an expectation is tell the expectation. That's the first thing. Number 2, ready? Explain why. If kids know the purpose behind what it is that you are asking them to do, they're more likely to comply with what you're asking of them. They're more likely to view you as a respectful individual and not a militant or authoritarian teacher. If you don't mind, what I'd like to do as we go through these is model it with you as though you were students, with something that I call power position. We say it? Power position. So power position, for me, came out of some research through Colorado College. And what they found in a study conducted at Colorado College is that students who sat as though they were paying attention during instruction actually paid better attention. They retained more information and they performed better on assessments than students who were allowed to sit however they wanted. So in my class, I teach power position, and I would recommend you do the same thing, but this is how it would look if I were talking to my students. Students, we're going to learn something today called power position. We say it? Power position. Thank you. And power position is a way that we sit at our seats. So this is me telling the expectation. Do you see this? Power position is a way that we sit at our seats so that I can tell you're paying attention. And the reason I'm going to have you do this is because when you sit like you're paying attention, you have the power to learn. I'll ask you answer. When you sit as though you're paying attention, you have the power to learn. You have the power to learn. So that's why I'm going to ask you to do this. Okay, let me do the next step and then I'll keep going. Number 3 stands for model. You could write model meeting the expectation if you wanted to be more thorough, but you model what that looks like. So I would tell my students, I'll just grab this chair. When I say sit in power position, this is what I mean. I mean that your chair is scooted up to the table, your hands are on top of the table, and you're looking at me. That's it. Your hands are on top of the table and your eyeballs are on me. That's what power position looks like. Now, make a little note if you want to, that not by number 4, still we're in number 3, but you can also include a non-model component, which is often useful, especially for younger grades or if you've got a highly disruptive class. If you can tell that as they come through the door on the first day. Non-models can also be helpful in teaching students exactly what you expect. So if I were doing a non-model with power position, it would look like this. Students, what I don't want to see, if I ask you to sit in power position, what I don't want to see are kids who put their hands under the table, or kids who slouch, or kids who maybe have their hands on top of the table, but they're looking at the ceiling or out the window. If you're in power position, your hands are on top of the table and your eyeballs are on me. And I would show them that's exactly what it looks like. So if you don't mind, I'm going to have you do that. Would you show me, teachers, what power position looks like? I see lots of chairs being scooted up. That's perfect. Thank you. Your hands are on top, just like Annie. I'm in love with that. And Katie, thank you. Hands are on top of the table and eyeballs are up here. Oh my goodness, Andrew, I love your eyeballs. Very nice. And you can be a little bit funny with them, can't you, as you do this? Now, I'm skipping ahead. Let me tell you what number 4 is, and then we'll finish this piece of it. Number 4 stands for practice. Or if you want to be more thorough, practice meeting the expectation. You actually have the students do exactly what you want them to do. So what I just did with you now, where I said I'd like you to put your hands on top of the table, chairs are scooted in, eyeballs are up here, that would be the practice. Do you need to practice the wrong way? Do you need to practice the non-model? No. I'm so glad you're shaking your heads no. No, the last thing we want is to give them permission to engage in a really silly behavior that will spiral your classroom out of control. But practice meeting the expectation. And then number 5, would you write, offer feedback? When having kids meet an expectation and they're practicing it, you should offer them feedback as to how they are doing performing with the expectation. If you want to write in parentheses underneath or do little arrows to help you remember, there's 2 types of feedback that we primarily offer. One is called supportive, one is called corrective. First type of feedback, supportive. In other words, I tell you what you're doing right. I praise you. I'm really positive and enthusiastic about how your behavior looks. The other type is corrective. Something's not quite right. We're not quite doing it the way we should. So if you don't mind, let's do this. And Reed, I'm going to pick on you since I know you. I'm going to ask you to be my little fidgety kid who doesn't quite meet the expectation. Okay? Oh, good, because I hated sitting like that. If you're really clear with your expectations, you typically won't have more than one little wiggle worm who doesn't quite do it. So that's why I'm only asking one, even in this big group, because if you're really clear and you're really effective with your positive feedback, you shouldn't have to do a lot of corrections. So we're going to back up a step. I'm going to just fly through it faster than you would normally do with your kids. So we're going to do something called power position. Power position is a way of sitting at your table or your desk where your hands are on top of your desk, you're not playing with anything, and your eyeballs are on me. And the reason we do that is because when you sit like you're paying attention, you have the power to learn. Some people remembered. This is what it looks like. This is what it doesn't look like. Now can we do a quick practice? Would you show me, please? Scooting up to your table, can I check that your hands are on top? Oh, Stephanie's scooting up. Thank you. Her hands are on top. April's hands are on top. I see eyeballs on me. Anne-Marie, thank you. And Jill. Reed, you're scooted up to the table, dude. Your hands are on top of the table. Just like Tara. Yep. Just like Chad, Lynn. Oh my gosh, I love it. Teachers, this is fabulous. That's exactly what power position looks like. Excellent. Your hands are on top of the table, dude. Okay. You really can follow directions now. I'm just kidding. I know. If you had that case, though, where a child didn't do it, you'd want to give them very little attention. So did you notice the interaction was quiet? And I used some touch then as a prompt to get him to do what I wanted him to do, but most of my attention, most of my praise went toward kids who were meeting the expectation. We'll talk really in depth about that in a later session, but that is the last step. Yes?
We have a little bit different situation with our specialists, is that the kids are not going to be able to all be lined up like this, and so it's harder to give them an exact, like a lot of the kids are going to have to turn around to see. So what would be your suggestion on how we tell them that? Because half the kids are not going to be able to be in power position.
Okay, so that's a great question. What if the kids cannot be in power position because you're a specialist or something, or your classroom is not conducive to that? Then what? I think the answer here is contextual fit. That you require that the kids sit appropriately for your setting. So maybe that would be your hands are just in your lap. Or maybe it would be if I ask for you to be in power position, that you know you have to watch me regardless of where you're sitting. So you have to adjust it a little bit based on your specific environment. Good question. You know what? It would be so nice if there was an easy way to remember this format for meeting expectations. It would just be so nice if there was an acronym or something that we could use to help us remember how to teach students. What? Tempo? What? Oh, does it spell tempo? Yeah, yes it does. It spells tempo. I keep this in mind as a way to remember that when you're teaching students behavioral expectations, you should be sure that you're covering these components. However, we're only human. And if you forget exactly which of these steps should be covered, let me tell you the two most important. And will you put a star by these or a cloud around them or a lightning bolt or something so that you know these two have to be done? Number one, tell the expectation. Be sure that at least you're verbally identifying what you want students to do. And maybe just show me with your fingers which other one do you think is the most important. Will you just show me? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, people who are doing this, guess what? Ding, ding, ding. Yeah, the practice component, when you have kids actually practice meeting the expectation. I cringe a little bit to say that the feedback is not also just as important, but if you're only going to remember two, those are the two. Tell them in practice, okay? Here's what I'd like to do. Actually, you know what? Let's do a quick echo first, and then we'll move on to the next thing I wanted to do. If you're teaching an expectation, my turn first. Tell the expectation. Tell the expectation. Explain why. Explain why. Model. Model. Practice. Practice. Offer feedback. Offer feedback. And then two most important are tell expectations and practice. I didn't even cue you. I was going to cue you, but you did it. Thank you. Okay, here's what I want to do. I have a video that shows me doing this in real time with my first graders from last year, because I started the year as a teacher. And let's see, can we scoot that up just a little bit, Lorene? Thanks. So the video is called Teaching Students the Rules, and it's me teaching them these 3 classroom rules. Following directions the first time, raising your hand to speak, and respecting others. What I want you to notice as I go through this with the kids, as I teach them my expectations, is that we start with non-academic practice. Will you write that in the parentheses there? Notice, non-academic practice. In other words, we're going to start easily. I'm going to start by asking them to do some things that I know they can be successful with before I move on to doing something that's a little bit more difficult. Okay, the next thing we're going to talk about are our classroom rules. Will you say classroom rules? Yeah. Classroom rules. We have 3. Congratulations, you're already doing the first one. I'm going to put it right here in the middle. Our first rule in our classroom, the one that's so important more than anything else, is that you follow directions the first time. And every time I do that with my finger, it means I don't have to tell you 2 times. I don't have to tell you 3 times or 5 times or 99 times. It means when I say it, you do it. So I'll start and I'm going to say follow directions, and I want you to go first time. Okay, I'll start. Follow directions the first time. Woo! Okay, I can't believe I'm doing this, but I'm adding another pepperoni. Because everybody did that right with me. Holy cow. Okay, so we're going to practice and see in my class who's good at following directions the first time. Here's your direction. I want you to wave at your teacher. Hi. Put your hands back. Quietly open your mouth. Close your mouth. Raise one hand in the air. Raise 2 hands in the air. Put both hands down. And I didn't even tell you to do it quietly, and you still did. That's amazing. Are you noticing the feedback? Okay, let's see if you can do some positive feedback. Without talking, stand up. Ashlyn standing up. Good. JD standing up. Trevor. Hallie standing up. Tate. Gabe. Without talking, sit down. Brooklyn went right back to power position. I didn't even tell her to. That was perfect. Wyatt, were you in power position too? Love it. And Claire? Okay. Great, following directions. You're going to hear me say the words according to research all the time. I'm a research geek. I love research. According to research, one rule that every teacher should have in his or her classroom is follow directions the first time. Doesn't matter what grade you teach, that should be one of your rules. The sticks that you wrote your names on out in the hall are now up here. Dun, dun, dun. So if I draw your stick, would you tell us what you said with your partner share? Why would following directions the first time be a valuable rule? What did you say, Celeste? There she is.
You don't really, as fun as it is to re-explain directions a million times, you don't have that time in your day to always consistently be explaining, and it doesn't really teach the children to put on their listening ear. I mean, if that's not a rule, they won't look to be listening.
Okay,
So.
I love it. You do not have time in your day to explain for every expectation, okay, be sure you do what I ask you to do. You do not have the time. In fact, let's do it like this. You do not have time to explain every direction. Ready? You do not have time to explain every direction. Thank you. You don't have time to set that expectation that, okay, be sure you do what I say, be sure you do what I say. I'll draw maybe one more. Caitlin. Be brave, Caitlin, there you are up at the front. Okay, why would that be an important rule? Follow directions the first time.
We could have talked about how it covers multiple rules, like
Did you hear that? It covers multiple rules.
being respectful, she mentioned, and listening and all of those kinds of things. It covers multiple rules.
Absolutely. It covers multiple rules. If I say, okay, everybody stand up quietly, you do it. If I say, everybody push in your chairs, you do it. If I say, we're going to go for the Dibbles test, everybody close your mouth while I pass out booklets, you do it. It doesn't matter what the rule, it doesn't matter what the direction is, you follow it the first time. So let's see. Can I look at yours? Where it says, why is this a good rule? My answer to that would be because it's an umbrella rule, because it covers so many different expectations that you will have of your students. It's an umbrella rule. It encompasses so many expectations. So if I ask, will you answer? I'll say, why is following directions the first time a good rule? Will you go like this and say it's an umbrella rule? Why is following directions the first time a good rule to have? It's an umbrella rule. You got it. Thank you. Okay, what I'd like to do is finish our video now. This is teaching part 2 of the rules. Raise your hand to speak. And I'm sorry I don't have the paper up on the camera, but what I'd like you to do, Bailey, can I use yours again? Thanks. You'll notice at the top of the sheet it says tempo in the parentheses there, and there's a little line in front of each one. Will you just make a check or an X or something as you see these components modeled? I may have left one off. I can't remember. I think I did. But if you're checking which ones I do, you should see that. So will you check when you see me tell them the expectation? Check if you see me having them practice. Check if there's a model. Check if I'm offering feedback, praising or correcting. Will you check for those? This is teaching kids to raise their hand to speak. It says, raise your hand to speak. Will you say it with me? Raise your hand to speak. That means if you have something to say that you don't call it out and say, Miss Smith, I want to tell you something. If you have something to say, you go like this and raise your hand, but watch my mouth. Your mouth stays totally closed. Sometimes I might call on you. I might say, oh, Alexa, what would you like to say? But sometimes you might see my hands go like this. And that means even if your hand is raised, put it down. Do you see that? So I want to practice this and see who in my class is good at raising their hand to say something. You have to start with your hands down. Perfect. Raise your hand if you can tell me your favorite color. Let's see, I'm watching for quiet hands. What's your favorite color, Hallie? Purple. Eliza?
Pink.
Pink.
Blue.
Brooklyn says blue. Alexa?
Turquoise.
Turquoise. Gabe?
Well, my number 1 favorite is black.
Black. Jacob? Turquoise. Good. Put your hands down. Good, following that direction. Now, let me tell you one more thing before we do the next one. When I say raise your hand quietly, it doesn't mean you go like this. Because that wasn't actually quiet. Give me a thumbs up if you heard what I did when I went.
Could you still hear it?
Do you
Yeah,
recognize
put your
that
hands
as a
back.
non-model? When I ask you this question, I want to see if everybody can raise their hand completely quietly like this. Okay, you have to start with hands down. Raise your hand if you can tell me what your mom's name is. Look at all those quiet hands. Claire?
Amanda.
Amanda? Trevor?
Jackie.
Jackie? Tessa?
Andrea.
Andrea? Danny?
Lisa.
Lisa? And one more, maybe two more. Miriam?
Terry.
Tara Lee? Last one, Todd.
Stephanie.
Stephanie. And you already went back to power position. I love it. I love it. Super job, guys. Hands are down. Okay. I'm going to do one more practice. You might say, but Miss Smith, I didn't get a turn. That's okay. Not everybody might get a turn right now, but you might get a turn in a minute or later in the day, okay? Here's our last question. Raise your hand if you can tell me your favorite animal, but you can only say one. Your favorite animal. Finn?
T-Rex.
T-Rex. Tyler?
A raptor.
Raptor. London?
Giraffe.
Giraffe. Daniel?
Crocodile.
Crocodile. Wyatt?
Orca.
Orca. Okay, I'll take one more quiet hand. Abe?
Dog.
Dog. Would everybody put their hands all the way down? Just like that. Holy cow. My class, I am totally in love with how you're following directions, sitting in power position. Mouths are closed. I'm kind of freaking out to give you another one. I can't believe I'm doing this, but you're kind of like earning it. Those two are the first two rules that I teach really in depth beginning of the day. And can we go back to, thank you. So here's what I want to have you talk about. First of all, I think I missed a step in tempo. Did I miss one? Did you catch it? Which one?
You didn't, I didn't hear an explicit explanation why.
Yeah, I didn't explain why. And every time I watch myself and I evaluate my own behavior, I realize that's the one most often I leave out. However, did you hear me tell them the expectation? In our class, you raise your hand to speak. You don't do it like, you just do it like. Did you hear the, what was M? Model. Did you hear the model? Did you see it? Practice, was there practice? I'll ask again and everybody say, oh yeah, because that was the bulk of it. Was there practice? Oh yeah. And then offer feedback. Did you catch that? Praising them a lot for what they did. Jill?
What did you do that one little boy did something? You have special points?
Oh, the little boy that I walked over to his desk with my pen. He was a little boy that came into me from kindergarten with a behavior plan in place. And part of that behavior plan was that he earned checks or tallies or smiley faces on a 9 grid for following directions the first time. So if he was right with me following directions the first time, that's what I was doing, is noting that on his little 9 grid. The reason he was in the back and not up front closer to me is because he had a behavior aid that he had to be within arm's length of. Yeah, good question. I'll draw a couple of sticks for you to share out now. What insights have you had about teaching students the rules? Amy?
Well, what I said is, because I've taught before, is that kids remember the why.
Okay.
When I've explained things, you can do all the others, but they will, if you really tell them why, that's what they remember.
Mm-hmm.
You know, especially throughout the year. Well, she likes it this way because, and that's what they remember, because usually it will follow a real world application or story.
Okay, absolutely. So kids remember the why. When you explain to them why they are expected to do that, it kind of humanizes the expectation for them. Perfect. Draw maybe one or two more. What did you say, Angeline? Yes.
We just talked about, the insights we had is that we were talking about how we wanted to be just like you and how it was hard, but
Hey,
give
thanks.
yourself that patience that you expect with your children, that we can be patient with ourselves, and that it takes practice.
Yes, it does take practice, because guess what? My first year teaching was a rockin' nightmare. Did I tell you that yet? It was. Be patient with yourselves. Video? No, it was destroyed long ago. Be patient with yourselves. Understand that you won't maybe achieve mastery the first day, and that's okay, but at least know that you're working toward that, right? Okay. For sake of time, I'll just say one more that I hope you noticed, is that teaching the rules takes time. Did you notice that? And that's a 7.5-minute video that we watched just practicing following directions the first time and raising your hand to speak. And by the way, I will revisit those Again, it's not like, okay, we did it the first day for 7.5 minutes, now you're done. Teaching the rules takes time, but it's an investment, which means it pays off later. Does that resonate with you? Do you agree with that? If you take time to teach your expectations, you will not have to spend time the rest of the year going like this and corralling the kids back in. So, yeah, Hayden.
I have a question. How would you follow up? Like, what did you do to follow up? Like, would it be like individual instances, or would you like go over it with all of them again?
Follow up for reviewing the rules. Is that what you're talking about? Okay, so how do you review the rules? So the next day I would say, you know what? I want to see if you remember the rules we talked about yesterday. The first rule we talked about was follow directions that, and they all go first time. And of course, your feedback is your most valuable asset. Did you remember that? Okay, fine. Then let me see who can shrug their shoulders very quietly. Ooh, Mary did it. Good. And I go through a quicker practice. It's maybe a minute, and then at the end I say, wow, I can't believe you're remembering that. Let me add a pepperoni. And then I might say, okay, another one of our rules was that we raise our hand to speak. And maybe I'll do it. It's a briefer practice. But what maintains the behavior is the feedback. You shouldn't have to keep explaining and keep practicing and keep modeling if you're using effective feedback and praising kids for meeting your expectations. I'll ask you answer. What is it that maintains the behavior? It's the feedback. Absolutely. And it's the positive feedback. So actually, let's do that again. And I'll say, what is it that maintains the behavior? And answer in your positive, flowery voice. Feedback, because that's what it is. What is it that maintains student behavior? It's the feedback. Yes. Thank you for humoring me. I want to give you time to do some practice on your own. I want you to think through using these steps in tempo to teach your students to respond to an attention signal. I'm going to give you 2 that I've seen that are really effective, and then I'll tell you a couple I've seen that are not effective. I want you to pick one, or pick your own if you have one. But in a minute, you're going to detail how you would teach kids to respond to your attention signal. In other words, to get their attention when you need to bring them back as a group, right? So I've seen a lot of teachers who say, students, give me 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Quiet. And they give students a countdown. I'll tell you what I like about that is that it gives students time to finish the thought that they're on. It gives them time to finish that sentence they're saying before they know they have to be quiet and look at the teacher. I've also seen a teacher who really effectively used this. Whatever clapping pattern she did, the students then had to echo her. So if I try that, will you just do it with me? If the teacher went, or sometimes you might not want to do one that's quite so lengthy. You could go. Oh, let's do that one more time. I'll go first. Okay, you got it. I also like that one because, again, it gives students just a minute of time to finish whatever it is they're saying before they know they have to watch you. What I don't like are attention signals that require a verbal response because then students have to stop immediately with what they're saying, and often they won't do it. So if a verbal response, I mean, 1, 2, 3, eyes on me. Do you know this one? And then you go, 1, 2, eyes on you. But how I usually hear students do it is they go, 1, 2, because they want to keep talking and finish what they were saying to their peer. I've heard another one where teachers will go, class, class, and they're supposed to go, yes, 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 you know these. They don't tend to be effective. You tend not to get a lot of involvement from the kids because they want to finish what they're saying. So I would encourage you to pick an attention signal where you give them time to finish what they're saying, like a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, or a clap. But independently, would you take 3 or 4 minutes and outline how would you teach kids to respond to an attention signal? Being sure you're telling them the expectation. Like, write down, what are you going to say? What's that practice going to look like? I'm just gonna, I don't know who it was. It was somebody in this pocket over here, but I heard somebody who said, let's practice that. I'm going to show you what it looks like, and you're going to respond. My heart beat a little bit faster. Yes, let's practice that. That's exactly what you should do. Maybe can I have one person nominate their partner to tell us theirs. You can say, oh, my partner did a great job. I really liked his or hers. This is the fun part. Yeah. Your partner, Bailey,
Yeah.
5th grade. Hi, welcome.
All right, so.
Tell us what you got.
I just did the same
Do you want her to
one.
stand up? Okay.
Okay.
They
All
asked
right.
for it. I'm sorry. I couldn't
It's
help
fine.
it.
My legs were hurting anyway.
Okay.
Okay, so I decided to do the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, but instead of just saying quiet, when I student taught, we had a little bell that we would ding. So I was gonna say, class, I want to gain your attention, and when I do that, I'm gonna count down from 5. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. When you hear this bell, you're gonna look at me, be in learning position. And so then, to explain it, I was like, this will let you finish up your conversations or work with enough time to ensure that you finish things. And then it'll show me that you're ready to continue learning once I have your attention. And even if you don't hear the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, when you hear that bell, it's kind of, I don't know, it's a different sound, so the kids will be able to look up at you.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And then modeling, I'll be like, it sounds like this, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, ding it, and then I'll be like, and this is what it looks like. And then I'll kind of go through the sensories with them of
Okay.
what it looks like, sounds like. And then let's try it. I want everyone to pull out any kind of book in your desk. And then they'll kind of shuffle. I'll be like, okay, ready? In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, ding. Have them all look at me. And try it again, maybe with a little more chatter, like, what did you eat for breakfast? Did you like it or did you not like
Okay,
it?
I love that. I'm going to pause you.
'Kay,
I
go
interrupted.
for it.
I'm sorry.
No,
I love
please.
that she said, then we're going to try it with a little more chatter. Did you see that gradual release of responsibility, that she's making it just a little bit harder than the second time they practiced? So she did more than one practice, getting a little harder. Keep going.
Okay, yeah, and then just have it so that there's more talk. Give them that 10 seconds or so to talk to their neighbor, whoever they want. Like, okay, class, come back in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, ding. Oh my gosh, that was so great. I could see that you're ready to learn and all those good things.
Love it. Did
Okay.
you love it? That was really nicely done. Thank you. One thing you can do, I've seen a lot of teachers that use a bell or that use an audible signal like that, and that's fantastic, especially when you're first starting, when you're first training them. But as your kids become better and better at the skill, you can transition away from it and give them credit for the transition. So that would look like, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, ding. Actually, a lot of you were quiet even before I got to 2. Wow, that was really nicely done, students. And maybe the next day, you know what, I'm going to try not dinging the bell. I'm going to see who can get quiet by the time I get to 1, even if they don't hear the bell, even if I don't sound the bell. So keep in mind that you can transition away from things like that because you might not always have a bell at your disposal. Okay, that was really beautifully done. Thank you. Question,
So,
Angeline.
something that I want to add to that is like I have a brother-in-law who does the clap thing, but he makes them put their hands on their head.
Is that Michael Torrey?
Yeah.
Ah, I love him.
And
I don't
so-
love him. I
He's pretty great. I love him.
respect him.
I really I
Okay.
love that because, like, he's like, their eyes can be on me, but kids still try and write or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So, some kind of like, Tristan was saying the mustache thing. You could have
Some sort of cue to show that they're with you.
eyebrow or-
Their hands aren't still fidgeting.
Yeah. So,
I actually was going to talk about Michael Torrey and that strategy in our partner talk session because I love how he does that. So let me just tell you now in case you want to use this. When he has kids doing partner talk and he wants to bring them back together as a group, he goes, pause, I'm not in partner talk mode, let me think. Okay, he goes, and the kids go, and then they all bring their hands up behind their head for just a fraction of a second and they come down to ready position. It's beautiful. It's so relaxing. Let's just try it. I'll do it. Students, thanks for coming back together. Appreciate you being ready to learn. Doesn't that feel nice? Okay, thank you. Yeah, keep that in mind if you want to steal that from Michael Torrey. Let's talk down here. If you'll move down to the question, I want to do a break in the next 7-ish minutes. What other behaviors should you explain and practice with students? We've talked about attention signals. We've talked about teaching the rules. What other behaviors should be taught using tempo using this format. I'm going to give you a hint. They include anything that's a procedure or routine. So we should be using tempo to teach I'll start, you finish, anything that's a procedure or routine. Anything that's a procedure or routine. So the procedure is what the behavior is, what it is that needs done. The routine is how we do it in our classroom. So maybe the papers need to go in the basket. That's a procedure we do every day. We turn in papers in the basket. The routine would be, how do we do it in our classroom? Do we let the girls go first, ladies first, and then the boys follow, or you do it as soon as you're done? What behaviors should you explain and practice with students? I'm hoping you'll be willing just to raise your hand and share some ideas. I might correct you. I might say, no, that wouldn't be best with this format, but will you share some ideas, Mimi?
Probably lining up.
Lining up, yes. Will you write it? Absolutely. I think I spend, if my video is correct, like close to 6 minutes practicing lining up. This is how we line up in our classroom. I saw another hand. Assemblies. Ooh, very good. This is how we act at assemblies. This is how we sit. This is how we don't sit. Yeah, Annie.
Coming in the morning?
Coming in the morning. Okay, so what that morning arrival looks like, thank you. Yeah, this is where you hang your backpack. This is where you take the self-start. This is how you trade your pencil for a sharp one, whatever it might be. I saw another hand. Paige.
Walking in the halls.
Walking in the halls, yes. If you do not teach them how to walk in the halls, they will not walk in the halls. Guess what they'll do? They'll talk in the halls and run in the halls and fall on the floor. Yeah, I can't say your name, 10, sorry. Ariane. Go ahead.
Say classroom jobs.
Okay, class jobs. What it is you expect kids to do individually to fulfill a responsibility. Perfect. Jill. Will you say that really loud? Will you say it with her? Transitions. Yes, that's huge. You've got to teach them. This is how we put our paper in our mailbox. This is how we go to the rug. I did my whole thesis on transitions and using this method with transitions. It's very near and dear to my heart. Okay, I saw a hand over here somewhere. Yeah, Annette. Restroom breaks. How we use the bathroom. 1 paper towel, 1 squirt of soap. You're not shouting at your neighbor. Caitlin.
How you do drills, so like fire drills or earthquake drills when they come. You don't necessarily have to teach them all at the beginning of the year.
Right, you wouldn't have to do a fire drill or earthquake drill at the beginning of the year, but you should do it before it actually happens, right? This is how a fire drill looks at our school for our class. Maybe 1 or 2 more. Elise?
Cafeteria behavior.
Cafeteria behavior. I think I spent about 20 minutes in the cafeteria the first day of school showing students this is how you take your tray, this is where you will go to sit, this is where you dump your tray. Here's how you walk back down the hall to put your lunchbox away or grab a coat or whatever and walk out to recess. Last hand. Stephanie.
How to handle instruments that are expensive.
Okay, so she said instruments. I'm assuming you must be music?
Music, yes.
Okay, she said how to handle instruments. Maybe could we say, if you're a classroom teacher, how to handle materials? Mm-hmm. So if we're going to use whiteboards in our classroom, you don't press really hard with the marker and ruin it. So we show them how to use classroom materials. Absolutely. What I hope you recognize from this list is that you should be teaching students what you expect in each of these formats. Do you agree with that? You should not just leave this to chance and say, well, they're in 5th grade. They should know how to line up by now. They might know how their other teacher expected them to line up. They will not know how you expect it. So what I hope you take from this is that we teach kids what we want. You say it with me. What I hope you take from this is that you teach kids what you want. Thank you very much. Last question. When should you teach these behaviors? All at once at the beginning of the day. That's letter A. Letter B, after you see that the routine is a problem. Letter C, immediately before the routine would normally occur in the day. Would you show me A, B, or C? The answer is C, yes. So in other words, if it's normally time for recess, we might go out 15 minutes early on that first day of school so I can show them what my whistle will sound like when it's time to line up from recess and how quickly they should come. and how they should stand ready in line to go through the doors. Immediately before you do that, practice meeting the expectation. Part 2 of this, we're going to talk about a couple tips and tricks for the first few days of school, a couple of strategies you can use to make sure that this is a successful experience for you. First question, what should be on the students' desks before school? Most of you probably know you should have a self-start on their desks, but the adjective I want you to fill in, if you would, what should be on the students' desks before school is an easy self-start. Quick idea why? Why would you want an easy self-start as opposed to a highly academic self-start on their desk? Sarah? Okay, so they feel successful right away. Yeah, Rachel.
We don't have to ask you any questions or any other students' questions, so it can be a quiet tone to start out.
Okay, ooh, I love that. So she said, then they can actually get started on it. They can self-start. Do you get it? And they don't have to ask each other questions or ask you questions about what they should do. It sets a quiet tone for getting to work right away. I'll give you an idea. Well, let me add one more reason. One more reason I would recommend having a self-start on the desk is because it sends the message that in our classroom we get right to work. From the first day of school, you want to establish that in our classroom we get right to work. I'll give you an idea that I saw from a teacher last year that I really loved. As the self-start on her 5th graders' desks, Annette Egan has a birthday card that she sets out. She had 2 copies, so I've taken both of these for you to see. Maybe we can just project it large. So the first one just says, "Happy birthday," and has the cake, and then there's a place at the bottom for the kid to fill in their name and their birth date. I would white out the birthday part if you teach kindergarten or preschool, kindergarten or first, because then you're going to have a lot of questions about, I don't know when my birthday is, I don't know how to write it. And it's supposed to be easy, right? But there's that one, and then this was the other one that she gave me. A little mice card. And what she does with these is has the kids color them, and then she collects them. She copies them on construction paper, then she collects them. And when it is that student's birthday, she passes these cards back out and lets the students sign them for each other. Let me show you one that my daughter did in her class. So that was her mouse card that she chose. And then would you just open it up? And on the inside, all the kids had signed it. And what I want you to notice about this, thanks, is that it's hole punched on the side over here, because when she brought this home from school, she said, "Mom, look what the kids did for me." And she opened it up, and look, Mrs. Egan even wrote a little note up here and said she hopes my birthday is as marvelous as I am. I think I'm going to keep this in my 5th grade portfolio of all my special work. Even though I didn't really do it, I kind of did the front, but I just want to remember it forever. Okay. So it's in her 5th grade portfolio. I had to get special permission to borrow it and promise to be very careful with it. So good way to build a relationship between the kids, to have a birthday self-start. I will tell you from experience that if you're going to do this, I would have an example up on the board of one that's already nicely colored, because if you don't, you'll get kids that color the whole thing blue and then they go, "Okay, I'm done." If you have a good example up there, you'll have more success. And then I'm going to show you, I want to show you a 3-minute video of my first day of school last year as the kids were coming in the door. And what I want you to notice is that the self-start is already on their desks. I don't think you can see it in the video, but there was an example up on the board of a good example of how this should be colored. And I want you just to notice as you watch this 3-minute segment, what are some things that make this work, or what are some benefits of the morning looking like this with the self-starts already on the desks?
He has an allergy. I put it on that paper.
Okay.
I haven't got the EpiPen at the school yet because you have to do it with the...
Right.
But it's in his backpack.
Okay. I'll text you if there's an issue.
Thank you.
Okay. Hi, sweetie. Tell me your name.
Addie.
Addie, that's right. Not Addison. She goes by Addie.
Yeah, I guess.
Mostly. Okay. Addie, do you remember where to hang your backpack? Will you go hang that up for me? And Zach, Oh, you found your crayons. Good job, dude. Perfect. Let's give you, I grabbed the wrong one. Give you this one. Claire, will you come here for a second? First graders who are already here and already working on your papers, super job doing that quietly. A lot of you found your crayons inside your desk. That's perfect. Thank you. Okay, did you turn in your papers for me? Good girl, thank you. So I'm going to give you your name tag. Because even though I know who you are, now other people can learn too. Perfect. Thanks, dear. Okay. Gabe? Oh, have a seat for me. This is the kid on the behavior plan, in case you're wondering. Looks great. 25.
That's how I do mine.
Here's what I want you to do next. Are you ready? I'm going to give you this. You can play, oh, listen first. You can play with the things in here, but you have to keep it at your desk.
Okay.
I don't want you to get up and walk around the room with it. Is that a deal? Okay. Thank you. Okay. You can just put everything in the basket. Thanks. Did you find your crayons? Daniel, can you help Alexa find her crayons? Can you show her where they are? Hi, Trevor. Nice to see you, dude. I'm going to give you your name tag, okay? Good job getting your crayons out. Found your picture. That's perfect. Ooh, Zach. Love that. That looks great. Gabe, guess what? I noticed you're sitting at your desk just like I told you to. That's called following directions the first time. Good job, dude.
I can't believe this many.
Hi, Eliza. Oh, guess what? I'll meet you up front by the basket, okay?
Eliza.
Good job remembering that. And I'm going to give you your name tag. There we go. And you can find your seat and do what the other kids are doing, okay? Oh, you know what, sweetie? I moved your seat right here instead of right here. Is that okay if I scoot you over one desk?
Yeah.
Thank you. Oh, Gabe, I want you to use Gabe, I want you to use a very quiet voice right now, okay? Thank you. Just back in her backpack. She doesn't need it today.
Okay, perfect.
Thanks, Jen. Okay, if you don't mind, I'll just take a couple hands. What made that work? Any insights as you watched that about how those kids are being set up for success?
I like that you're able to talk to people individually while also having something progressive going on, like the self-start.
Okay, so it gave me an opportunity to talk to the kids as individuals, to greet them individually, to talk to their parents individually, while the other kids were occupied doing something meaningful. Thank you.
You get lots of feedback.
Okay, giving lots of feedback. Gabe, that's called sitting at your desk. That's called following directions the first time, dude. Give me 5. First graders who are already at their seats sitting quietly, thank you very much. Yeah, already starting to use feedback as they meet my expectations. Thought I saw one more hand. Yeah.
I bet it was a great sort of stress reliever for them for the first day of school, to just come in and know exactly what they could do.
Oh.
Have it be something that they could do, but not be looking around wondering
Okay.
what is it like to be first grade.
You know what? I hadn't never thought of that before, but I agree with that it could be good stress relief for those kids who maybe don't know what to expect or are a little bit apprehensive about what's going to happen at school, that this is something easy, it's predictable, I can do this, especially before I know and trust my teacher. Yeah, in the back. I can't see your name tent.
How did you already know their names? Did you study their pictures before?
Oh, this is so not fair. This is the advantage of teaching 10 years, is that I had so many of their siblings that no. That's the trick. You have to have had siblings for 10 years, and then you just kind of know the kids. If I didn't know their names, though, it was an opportunity just to say, tell me your name, Addie or Addison, how do you say it? And then to put the name tag on so that I could read the name tag. Okay, last hand. I saw one more hand. Yeah.
I just have a question. So, do you tell them at back to school night that this is what because I didn't hear you telling the kids that they should go to their desks and do
Ooh,
this? How
good
did you just know
question.
that that's what you wanted them
Do you have to tell them at back to school night that that's what they're doing? I did not. It's easy enough sitting on their desk that I tell the first 1 or 2 kids who come in, see if you can find your crayons in your desk. Go ahead and start coloring this. I have the example on the board. That sounds, yeah, it sounds funny, doesn't it? But that's enough to get the rest of the kids kind of looking at each other and following suit. Let's go through the next question. I hope this is really easy for you. Would you move down? What is the first item the teacher should discuss with the students? I'll give you a clue. It starts with an R. The first item the teacher should discuss with the students are the rules. So will you write it in capital letters? So after we've put our self-start to the side, the first thing we're going to talk about are the rules. I wish there were a good format you could use to teach rules expectations. It would be so nice if you had a way to teach the rules. Wouldn't that be great if there was some research on how that was most effectively done? Certainly. Oh, sorry, what?
I said it would certainly up the tempo, right?
Very clever. It's certainly up the tempo, yes. I'll ask you answer. And will you answer in a big voice, because this is really important. What's the first item the teacher should discuss with the students? It should be the rules. That comes very first before anything else. Next question on these first few days of school, what comes after you teach the rules? Ready? The answer is the normal schedule, modified. Will you write modified? To include practice. So on my first day of school, after we come in from recess, I say, first graders, normally we will do sacs and phonics right now. Today I'm just going to show you how we pass down the worksheets, and we practice passing down the worksheets. And then I'll ask you to put them in your mailbox, and we practice putting them in our mailbox. Or I would say, what happens if your pencil breaks while we're doing our sacs and phonics? Let me show you what to do if your pencil breaks. Let me show you how you trade your dull pencil for a sharp pencil. So you're still following your normal schedule as much as you can, but you're not teaching content, you're teaching procedures. Did you hear that? You're not teaching content, you're teaching procedures. Thank you. Here's my idea for you, because I always have teachers who say, are you going to pass out like a first day schedule or a first week schedule, what you think we should do in our classrooms? My answer is, regretfully, no. Because I hope you can appreciate how difficult that would be to come up with a good schedule that was generic enough that everybody grades K through 6 could follow it, right? That would be really insane. So my suggestion for you is to follow the, will you fill in, same schedule? Thank you, a lot of you knew it. Follow the same schedule as your cooperating teachers, the teachers on your team. And modify it as needed for you, but I would invite you, I would encourage you to ask your cooperating teachers on your team, what should I do, and then do what they do, being sure you're practicing procedures. Question, April.
We were told that the principal actually gives us our schedule, at least at our school, so that might be somebody else's case too.
That's actually probably the case in a lot of schools. The principal will give you your schedule. Does anyone know already whether that's the case for them, that the principal will give you? A lot of us. Okay. So in that case, follow what your principal does, right? Follow what he or she asks of you. But be sure it's not about teaching content. It's about teaching expectations, meeting expectations, following procedures. Yep. Let's go down to the last question. What do I do with extra or downtime during the day? Because guess what? Passing down our sacs and phonics papers and maybe practicing putting them in a folder in case they weren't done and practicing putting them in the mailboxes might not take the full 40 minutes that have been allotted for that lesson. So what do you do if it doesn't take the full 40 minutes? What do you do with that extra time so that you don't all of a sudden have chaos on your hands because the kids are bored? I'm going to suggest that you focus on building relationships with and between the kids. As a way to help us remember that, would you just show me at your seat if you have an action we could do that goes with the word relationships? With downtime, you should focus on building, okay, Hayden, you're going like this, like we're coming together. I love that, okay? So I'll ask and say, what should we do with downtime? And let's say focus on relationships, okay? What should you do with downtime during the day? Focus on relationships. Yeah, absolutely. We want to foster relationships. Here's my idea, and then we're going to do an example. My idea, it's not my idea. I just lied. It's Audrey's idea. Audrey, stand up. She's.
It wasn't my idea either. I
Oh.
got it from someone else.
She stole it too. The best teachers are the best thieves. Write that down. Just kidding. Well, I heard it from her. It's something I never did, but I wish I had done because I think it's so powerful. Here was the idea she told me. Give kids a paper bag at back to school night as a way to meet and greet each student in the first weeks of school. Now, something Audrey said earlier today that as I heard it, I thought, oh, duh, I should have known that. She said she, as the teacher, always did hers first to model for the students what that should look like. I didn't think to do that, so I asked 2 other people if they would do it for us because I want you to see how this looks. Do you have a paper? Can I use it? Do you know what I'm talking about when I say the brown paper bag? This one? Okay, so what Audrey does is she sets this bag on the students' desks on back to school night, and it's got directions. Help your child remember to return to school tomorrow with 3 to 5 items in this bag that tell us more about your child. Thanks, emoji. And they take this home and they fill it with 3 to 5 items and they bring it back the next day. And then when you have downtime, you can pick a bag and get to know that student. Ashley. There she is. Could we learn more about you?
Sure.
Could we relationship build with Ashley? Yeah, come up here. Raise your hand if you're really curious to know what's in the bag. I am. Okay, so let me move this. I would encourage you to do this before you just start sharing the bag. We want to know who we're talking to. So I would say something like, students, this is Ashley. And do you notice the affection that you can have opportunity to use here? Build a relationship between teacher and student. Selfie, just kidding. That would be really funny, actually, to take a selfie and send it to the parent. At any rate, you could do something like this, where we say, this is Ashley. Everybody say, hi, Ashley. Will you do it? Hi, Ashley. And just for fun, let's clap her name in syllables. Will you clap Ashley? Ashley, just so they practice saying it a couple of times. Would you show us what's in your bag?
Yes, I will. I brought 3 things that kind of describe me. A little car. I'm a mom. I have two little boys, so we have lots of these at our house. And then a little hole punch. I love anything like crafty or like scrapbooking, so that's something I love to do. And then my last one is like a dual purpose. It's a Texas-shaped cookie cutter. I grew up in Texas, and I also love to cook. So.
Wow. So Ashley, I have a cousin who lives in Texas, and she always says the word y'all. Instead of saying you all, she says y'all. Can we do it for you? That'd be okay?
Oh, yeah.
And everybody say, what's up, y'all? Practice like you're from Texas with Ashley. Ready? What's up, y'all? And then you can, there, we're so funny. We love being in school together. Foster the relationship. Thank you very much. You're so cute. Allison.
Can you take a selfie with the students?
Can you take a selfie with the students? I would. I think it would be funny. And if I received a selfie of my daughter and her teacher on the first day of school, I'd be stoked. I'd be like, that is so stinking cute. And you know what my daughter would do? Mom, guess what my teacher did with me today? She took a selfie with me. It was so fun. I mean, that would elevate your status from here to here in a heartbeat because she's a 6th grader. Okay, tell us your name.
I'm Allison.
Allison. Can we all say, hey, Allison? Ready? Hey, Allison. And can we finger tap the name Allison? So you do it on your palms like this. You count the syllables with your fingers. Can we finger tap the name Allison? Ready? Allison. Would you show us what's in your bag, Allison?
I like big earrings, and I cannot lie.
Get it? Do you get it? Your kids won't, but you do.
This is a DI bag because I love to go to thrift stores I find it challenging. Oh, I double whammied there. This is my family. I have 4 children, and I was a lot skinnier then. I love period dramas, Pride and Prejudice. I like the long version better, but this one fit in my bag, and that's everything.
Guess what? One of my favorite shows in this entire world is Pride and Prejudice. Do you want to be BFFs? Let's see. Okay, do you see what's happening though? Do you see how it's a chance to foster teacher-student relationships? And now every time any of you look at Ashley, you might think, oh, Texas, or you'll have some connection to them as a person and not just as another face in the classroom. I love that. Here's my tip for you under this idea is to call the parents. Oh, thank you, already filling it in. Call the parents of kids who share each day. I did hear a couple of people who turned to each other and said, oh, I don't actually know why you would call a parent, or I don't know what value there would be in that, except it's really time consuming. So let's share out if you don't mind. Let's talk as a group. Why would you want to call a student's parent after they had done a brown bag activity in your classroom? Hopefully this person had an idea. Jana? Right there? Yes.
We had a hard time to understand, but I think it would be a way to give the parents a feedback. Like what you said about the cell with the students, so sending the parents a cell and giving them a feedback day or activity.
Yes, you're exactly right. She said she didn't understand, but I think that was a beautiful answer. You want to give the parents feedback about how that day went, right? You want to give them some sort of feedback that I noticed your child, I acknowledge your child, here's a funny selfie, so you think I'm a fun teacher, something. Another reason it would be valuable to call a student's parent. What did you say, Morgan? Oh, either one of you. Thank you.
It's a two-way thing. You make relationships with the students, they need one with you, but parents are just as much involved in their education as you are. So you need to build that relationship so that way you have that support at home, and they also feel safe having their kids with you all day. Because that would be nerve-wracking as a parent. I can't imagine it, but it kind of takes away that fear that they're in good hands.
Okay, so you want to calm the parents' nerves, and you want to recognize that the parents are important stakeholders in the educational relationship. There's at least three people in this relationship. My turn first. Teacher. Students. Parents. And as often as we might want to wish them away, we can't. Will you shut those doors, Audrey? Do you mind? Let me tell you a sad story. Just a couple of days ago, I was at a splash pad party, and I was talking to a gal who had a little child that just left first grade. And she said she found out that I was a district coach, and she said, do you have any influence over which teachers get fired? And I said, not that I'm aware. And she said, I was so upset last year. I took my daughter to back to school night, and she said the teacher was so snippy with us. And I went up to her and I asked her, can you show us where the lunchroom is? And she snapped at me and said, I will show the students that tomorrow. You do not need to worry about it tonight. And she said, I was so bugged. She said, I went home that night and I told my husband she will not be in that teacher's classroom. And she disenrolled her. She hasn't even been to the first day of school, and that student was disenrolled and sent to another school with another teacher because the parent didn't feel safe having her child sent there. And these are the words she used. I mean, if I'm going to send my baby to her, she better watch what she's doing. I was like, yes, I agree completely. You want to make parents feel safe. Sarah?
My other thought with this is you don't want the first contact that you have with parents after that first day to be negative. So talking to the parents about how great they did and talking to them about how you connected with them on this and how the kids really liked that they brought that. It also builds that safe environment, not just you as a teacher, but that their child is being supported by their peers as well.
Absolutely. Especially if you've got a hard student and you can identify that student that very first day, you don't want that first interaction to be negative. I'm sorry, I have to tell you what John did on the playground today. You're setting yourself up for failure if you do that. My little Gabe, the one that had the behavior plan, I called his mom at lunch the very first day of school. I don't normally do that, but I called his mom at lunch while he was still caught being good. Oh my gosh, Gabe is just having an awesome morning. He's been following directions. He's so sweet. He uses such good manners. Loves the color black. He told me that very exuberantly when I asked him, right? Did I have to call her a few days later for something upsetting? Yeah, I did. But then when I called, Stephanie, hey, it's Sarah Smith. How you doing? Good. How are you, Sarah? We already have a positive relationship going. Thank you. Do you know what? For sake of time, I do see a few more hands, but I'm going to ask you to put hands down, even though I know there are other reasons it's valuable. The point is, you should make a phone call home to parents within the first few weeks of school. Will you nod like you agree? You should make a phone call home to the parents in the first few weeks of school. Tell you a quick story. I had this little boy, Tate, my first year of teaching. He struggled. He was resource qualified, and he struggled in every category, behaviorally, academically, you name it, he struggled. I called his mom like the third day of school, and I said, hey, Carrie, I just wanted to chat with you about Tate, and she immediately went, oh my gosh. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm apologizing already, I'm sorry, what happened? No, nothing happened. I just wanted to tell you what a sweetheart he is. He's got these gorgeous big blue eyes and his bright blonde hair. He is such a cute kid, and he's so excited to learn. Every time I tell the kids to take out their whiteboards, he says, okay, Miss Smith, and she laughed, and we chatted for a few minutes about what a unique and sweet kid this Tate was, and he was. And at the end of it, she did this. Sarah, I just want to thank you for taking the time to call. As you've probably seen, Tate struggles, and his dad and I just really worry about him, and we don't get a lot of support with him, and I just really appreciate this phone call. You're welcome. I love your child. You're welcome. At the risk of sounding like Maui, you're welcome. Isn't that the song? At any rate, I got a lot of mileage out of just that single interaction. Academically, I feel like I failed that child that year. If he were in my class now, I feel like I could push him to be a good mathematician, and I could push him to be a good reader. I did not know how to do that my first year, and he did not meet benchmark in any of the categories across the board. But his mother forgave me that because she knew I loved him, and I did. I cared about him as a student. Okay, let's flip to the last section, if you will. Remember that effective teachers have 3 practices in place. I don't care where you fill this in. It doesn't much matter, but will you fill in, effective teachers have 3 practices in place. In one of them, will you write strong academic instruction? In other words, they know the content and they know how to teach it so that your child understands it. And maybe can we do this one? I'll say, what do effective teachers do? And you'll say, strong academic instruction. Can we do it like we're strong or powerful? What do effective teachers do? Strong academic instruction. They are powerful. Next piece, effective teachers have effective classroom management. In other words, they explicitly teach kids what they expect behaviorally, and they're really good at praising kids for meeting those expectations, correcting them if they don't meet the expectations. They have effective classroom management. Trying to think of a quick action we could do. Maybe the kids don't fall apart, they stay together as a group, they stay with you. So effective teachers have effective classroom management. Thank you. Last piece, effective teachers have good relationships. And on mine, I put 2 little lines going out to remind me good relationships with students, good relationships with parents. Hayden, can we use yours again? They have good relationships. Yep. Will you do it with me? Effective teachers have good relationships. Absolutely. Okay, this is before you go. This is what I would call your ticket to being able to go, okay? Can I use yours?
Yeah.
Stephanie, thanks. Okay, so Stephanie has very conscientiously already put her notes in her binder. You have a tab. I'm going to flip back to the beginning. You have a tab. The very first tab on yours should say mentor. If you turn that, you have a mentor log, and your mentor teachers will explain more to you about that, and I'll talk to you about it in our next class together. But if you will turn past the mentor logs that go through February and March, you'll see what's called a tips takeaway log. Don't tear it out. What I'm going to ask you to do is take it out. I'll bring yours back in just a sec. And then would you do this for me? At the top, will you print your name so that I can read it? And then the date, session number 1, you can just circle it. And then what main ideas will you take away from this session? I would like to know from you what insights did you have, what helpful tips or strategies will you take from this session into your classroom. At the bottom, you can sign it. Guess what? Then I'm going to read these. I will read every single one of them, and I will sign it after I have read it. And I'll probably make little comments on it, give you some feedback too. But would you take a few minutes and write down ideas you will take away from this session?